Ball X Pit, or Ball Pit, is a brick-breaking, ball-fusing, ball-building survival roguelite, and it's been doing really well recently. It came out in October of 2025, and it's even been nominated for Best Indie Game of the Year. The reviews are overwhelmingly positive, and it was only a matter of time before I got my hands on it. I finished the game, almost 100%ed it, kind of. I mean, this kind of goes infinite, but I've gotten all the infusions, I've beaten the final boss with multiple characters, I've got all the buildings, every single blueprint, everything, because I wanted to make sure that I had the full picture before giving my thoughts on this game, because I think my opinion is going to be a little controversial. Now, before moving forward on this review, I want to give a quick spoiler warning on this game. I will be talking about spoiler stuff, and the footage is also going to have some spoilers in it. It's not a super heavy spoilery game, all things considered, but a lot of the charm is the discovery of all the new biomes and levels, so I'm not going to be showing too much of it, but a little warning. So before getting into the nitpicky stuff and my overall thoughts, I want to quickly explain how this game works, right? So this is kind of like a brick breaker. You're controlling a character at the bottom of the screen, and you're going to be throwing some balls against enemies that are slowly moving towards you, right? So the big difference here is that there is not an actual platform you're moving around to bounce off the balls. It's kind of almost like an idle automated game. Gameplay-wise, it's very straightforward. That being said, there is a little bit of a bullet hell gameplay where some levels, some bosses, you are going to be evading some pretty big amounts of bullets here and there, but overall it's just, throw your balls, they do things, and more importantly, try to find the right builds and combinations to create some really cool builds. So throughout your runs, you're going to be finding passives and new balls to throw. And the cool thing in this game, and what really grabs a lot of people's attention, are the fusions and evolutions. You can fuse certain balls together, you can evolve certain ones, and then get them together to create even bigger fusions. And effectively, there's a really impressive and fun amount of possibilities with the different combinations that people can come up with, because the game doesn't just inherently have all these pre-made combinations. There are some, they're called evolutions, but then the actual fusions, that's a crazy possible combination, because you can fuse any ball of any sort together. So that's where a lot of the fun comes in, is where you can actually figure out and come up with your own recipes, which I will be touching on a lot more later on. Let's talk about the base building aspect, right? Because this game is split in two. This is another one of those roguelikes that tries to do two different quote-unquote genres. The one with the brick breaking, and then the actual base building. So between your runs, you're going to go back to your hub, and you're going to create this huge base full of a bunch of buildings and little resources that you can gather and harvest, and every single time you come back, you're gonna build more, and then you're going to throw your characters like little balls to go and harvest them automatically. You harvest, it's really quick, you go back into a game, it's really quick, and you do this back and forth at a very fast pace, all things considered, because runs only last about 15 minutes, and the base building aspects in between the runs are about 3 to 5 minutes, so the pacing is really, really fast in that regard. Before getting into a lot of the controversial opinions, I want to talk about the things that I think this game does really well and that I really appreciate. First off, I want to talk about the audio visuals. Visually, it's a nice game. It has its own style, and yeah, it's quite pretty for a little indie game. But the music, oh my gosh, the music is incredible. There is music per level. Obviously, each level will have its own track, but it's really, really well composed. Each of them have their own kind of style, and a lot of the enemies in the level, they kind of dance with the music. They even sometimes do noises with the music, and then whenever there's a boss, the music will actually have a different layer on top of the original music that's playing in the back to get more intense, and that's a lot of work considering there's quite a few levels in the game and a lot of different bosses. I can see myself actually listening to the music outside of the game because it's really killer. Next up is the actual content in the game, the levels and the characters. There's a lot of levels and there's a lot of different characters. I love the character design. I think the further along you unlock more characters, the more unique they're going to be, and the more you can really do some crazy, fun, unique builds thanks to their inherent mechanics. And later on, you'll be able to fuse characters together to create unique combinations combinations by combining, you know, two mechanics. I find that really fun, really cool. It was a blast to find all these new characters and to experiment with them, and then just being able to find new levels and having new biomes with new little mechanics to adjust to was really fun. I thought the actual kind of adventure side of it was a very enjoyable experience. The bosses at the end of each level are quite unique and pretty fun. They all have their kind of like bullet hell mechanic. They also all come with little monsters, little mobs with them to still have your balls benefits from like on-kill effects and stuff like that, which is always something that I advocate for in roguelites or roguelikes that have a lot of enemies. I thought that really nice to have. And then the actual harvest mechanic, it's really unique in the hub. It's very simple, but it's a cute, simple way to have this base building thing by just pressing a button and seeing things, you know, get built and get harvested. It's actually quite fun and then quite creative. Okay, so those are my positives. And again, I want to reiterate that I think this game is pretty good. I just don't think it's great. Personally, I have quite a few issues with it, which, you know, it's totally fine. But I want to share some of those thoughts with you. And again, if you disagree, then great. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. I have a bunch of nitpicks, but I think to give the overall idea, one of my biggest issues with this game is the overall pacing. Early on, you're going to be starting a level and you're going to be losing whenever you kind of unlock a new biome, because the game really is a roguelite where it really pushes players to upgrade your buildings and upgrade your levels of your characters to get all these stats in order to actually perform well. I feel like this game has a weird blend of wanting to be strategic, but also not at all. And it's hard to explain, but for me, either you were completely underleveled and not able to possibly get through the new level and actually find all these new things, or being completely overpowered after having built enough things to just completely decimate a level. And that's because of the way the stats work, right? So in the hub, you're going to have all these buildings are going to increase the stats, but a lot of games that have stats make it very apparent and very easy to follow along. You know, if you have a game that, you know, when you do an attack, you deal 10 damage, and if you get +1 attack, you now are going to deal 11 damage. That makes sense. But for Ball Pit, I never personally fully conceptualized all the stats that the game was giving me, because they were kind of all automated and each character came with a bunch of stats that you can look at, but at the end of the day, the game is so chaotic that it didn't really feel like anything, if that makes sense. Like, clearly I can see if I'm going to destroying everything around me or being underpowered, but I didn't feel like the specific stats did much other than just, oh, now all the chaos is a little bit more chaotic or is just killing things easier. Does that make sense? I wish I could do a better job at explaining it. Basically, the stats are very important, but they were hard to conceptualize to me. And the thing is, I think the most fun part about this game is the evolution and fusion parts, where you're going to be able to combine really unique recipes, right? But unfortunately, I felt like all of the experimentation and the fun combination that I was able to do was once I was 90% done with the game, because the runs are really short, and that's actually a pro and a con. On one way, you know, in one end it's nice to have a short run so you can just go back to your base and rinse and repeat, but on the other, I feel like people are not going to have the time to really experiment with the really cool aspects that the game actually has to offer until way later. There are some insane combos where you can evolve specific balls and then fuse them with another ball that duplicates the effect, and then you can just wipe the screen. But I was only able to do this consistently once I completely beat the game, which I just found really sad. I think at the beginning what's going to happen is that players are just going to find random evolutions and they're going to be like, oh, that's a cool effect, and then they just kind of see everything happen without much strategy. And I guess it's okay to not have strategy in every single one of your games, but it feels like the game wanted to try to have players have the right combinations to do strategic things, but you're not going to be able to be strategic until way later because you don't know what kind of evolutions are available. You don't know how fissions work and how evolutions work until you've got a lot of information, because the game doesn't really tell you much, which is fine, but I just think it's a bit of a wasted opportunity. So I guess at the end of the day, my biggest issue is just kind of the pacing, even though I did compliment the pacing in terms of how fast it was to go between the hub and the actual levels. I think the overall pacing of the entire game just felt off. It felt like at the beginning it was just chaos, random, and at the end when I was able to do strategic things and actually plan out, haha, I can do this combination, it didn't matter because I one-shot everything consistently. And I wish there was this middle line that I could cross way sooner, where I had to be strategic with which evolutions to go for and what fissions to go for, and also have it be a challenge, which is just not the case, at least in my experience. So that's my overall thoughts on the game. I think the gameplay is kind of mindless, which I thought was a little disappointing. I was actually hoping for a real brick breaker experience where you had to bounce things from your character. Yes, there is a character specifically that does that, but it's not like you can really strategically do much with it because the game is so chaotic that it's not like a traditional brick breaker. It doesn't matter where the balls go, and it's weird because they have this mechanic where you can try to catch your balls, and if you do, it's usually going to be a beneficial thing. But there's so many things on the screen and you barely move at fast that it doesn't really matter. They have a lot of these mechanics to try to make the game feel more strategic, but I think they're kind of useless or just barely impactful. So yeah, I don't know. That's just my take. Now let's talk about some more specific things that I have issues with, but that I still find fairly impactful. First are the fissions. I have some big issues with that. It's the little things that you can randomly find to evolve and fuse your balls together. Now, that is a core element to the gameplay. And how do you find them? Randomly. And I don't like that myself because you can't plan exactly when you can evolve things. Now, you're gonna understand that they come every now and then, maybe every like 45 seconds to a minute, and you kind of adjust to it. But early on, when you start playing the game, it feels really weird because the fissions can randomly upgrade balls and passives from 1 to 5 of them in an instant. If you get a 5, it is drastically more impactful than getting 1. And how does that happen? Randomly. I don't understand why that's the case. I felt like that was not a necessary random factor to be added to the game, especially early. Now later on, you can kind of manipulate that to be between 3 to 5 after unlocking certain buildings. But I don't know, I just felt like that was just a weird thing to have because you can't create any of your fusions or evolutions without your balls being at max level. So you need those levels. Those levels are extremely important, and those fissions just occur randomly and give you random amount of levels, which just didn't feel great when I was trying to do something specific. On top of that, during bosses, fissions can't drop anymore, which that is also such a shame to me because sometimes you got all the pieces together and then you get to the boss and now you can't do anything about it. And sometimes you might have a really slow build and the boss is gonna take, you know, like a solid 5 minutes because you didn't get your build going and you just need that one fission. I don't know why they can't just give you more fissions during boss fights if it's gonna take so long. Just feels disappointing. So yeah, not a fan of the fission stuff. I like the idea of finding them and then you can like evolve and fuse stuff. That's core, but I think there's so much RNG to it that I think really kind of ruins certain aspects of it. Another small aspect, but that is a major part of the game to me that I have issues with, is the passives that the game gives you. Now during your run, you're gonna have 4 to 5 balls or 4 to 5 passives that you can have. And the balls are extremely important. Naturally, that's where all the build is, but the passives are not really. A lot of them are really underpowered compared to what you can do with the balls. Now that's fine, right? Like, hey, that's okay. You can have the priority on the balls and have the passives on the side, but the problem is that when you level up or when you have those fissions, they also take spots in terms of what can be upgraded and what you can find. And so the game kind of treats it equally to the balls, even though they are way less important than the balls. I think the passives need more to them to make them interesting, to actually, you know, have some interesting combinations that could occur with those cool fusions, because most of them we're not going to just interact at all with them. There's this whole thing with the stone statues. If you hit to the left or the right, I mean, they're kind of there, but for me they just kind of are filler that take away from the more important stuff. And another aspect that I find kind of weird is that there are some evolutions you can do with passives, and you can find one very, very early in the game. There's a very clear combo that you can do that the game pushes you to do early in the game. And once you find it, you're like, oh, cool, so passives can also be fused, except that then I spent like the next 8 hours not finding another one. I was like, why are you giving me this opportunity to know that the game allows you to do some passive fusions, but then there's barely any in the game available in comparison to the balls. So yeah, don't love the passives in this game. I think they're way too far from the balls in comparison, and that's okay, but unfortunately they also do take space in terms of levels ups, and that can be kind of annoying. And then I want to talk a little bit about the actual hub. Now, the hub in concept I think is pretty cool. As I talked about before, I think they have some really cool gimmicks. But I still have some issues, and I think mostly with kind of the UI and quality of life stuff. So if we look at my base, I know it's a beautiful base, I could have done a better job at handling my base, but personally, I felt like it was just too annoying to place things correctly. And there's a few reasons why. First off, it's really hard to know what like all of these here actually do. You have to hover over them individually to remember what they do, and they all have different colors, and there's not a very easy way for me to remember what these things do. Now, you can also level them, right? And when you level them up, there's going to be an interesting mechanic where here, if I level this building right here, now I have to bounce off this building to complete the upgrade, which is an interesting concept, right? Because now when I harvest, you're going to usually have your main path where you can actually collect resources and money, but now I have to move this building over there. And moving this building here is actually pretty annoying because now I realize that, oh shoot, well, okay, they actually do a pretty good job here to move this stuff around, but sometimes if I'm going to be leveling up multiple things, for instance, level this building and level this building, and I'm like, cool, well, now I have to place all these correctly so I can, finish the buildings, and now I have to find a way to move everything accordingly so that I can still have my normal path, but move all the buildings around it that kind of benefit with, so I don't need this for it doesn't actually do anything. I'm going to move this here, it doesn't fit, so I move this here, and then I'm going to have to replace them accordingly later. And now there is a building that helps here, but that's only late game stuff. It's a bit of a mess. Personally, I think it gets a little confusing and a little hard to have to constantly move everything around, and then once they're done being built, so if I speed this up, quite satisfying, boom, now they're all built, I'm like, great, that was fun, but now I have to place them back towards another area where they can get the passives that work with other buildings, and I have to remember where they go, and it's not the worst, it really isn't, but I just got tired of maximizing everything and figuring out where certain buildings work with other things, just because it's really hard to keep track of everything. Like, resident of nearby houses gain 30% more XP, but I have to hover over it to always know that that's the case. So I kind of wish the UI and quality of life was tweaked a little bit in the hub. It's not the end of the world, but it is something that I got tired of doing by the mid-game, just trying to figure out where everything should be to maximize everything. I know some people are going to love that, and that's great, but didn't really work for me. Again, this is just all my own opinion, of course. All right, and now just to finish everything off, I got a few tiny nitpicks I just want to bring up because, well, I like doing that kind of stuff. First, I want to talk about the hurt box. Your character's hurt box, where you can actually evade bullets, is really, really hard to figure out. The bullet hell experience visually looks cool, but to this day, I still don't fully understand where my hurt box is. Sometimes I evade a laser or a bullet and I don't understand why. Sometimes I get hit by one. It's very unclear, and it feels like the bullet hell gameplay was just not really fleshed out correctly. You're gonna get a lot of blueprints, and it does show you which levels have blueprints, but I still don't fully understand how you can unlock these blueprints, because sometimes I would play a level that had a blueprint and I just didn't find anything, and sometimes I did and I got something, and I was like, cool. And also it was kind of hard to know where I could find a blueprint to find new characters by the end. In the end, it didn't really matter too much because I got them quickly, so maybe there's an automated system, but it was just kind of unclear. I wish there was more information that would tell you which level had what kind of blueprint. I think that would be nice. I know some people would think that that's too much information, but yeah, I thought that was a little confusing. because some blueprints are way more important than others. And to circle back on the building situation, one other reason why the hub got so confusing for me by the end is because some buildings, including the ones for characters that you unlock, so when you unlock a new character, you need to build its building, and the building doesn't actually do anything at first. So you just kind of place it randomly on your hub, but then as the character levels up, those houses get random stats. Well, they're not random, like they have that predetermined, but you wouldn't know what they are. And some people might find that fun. It's like, oh cool, now that one actually regrows boulders faster, so now you can move it to the next. But for me, it was like, oh, this one now does that, but I already have an entire like section that's done for like boulders, and now I have to move this there. I'm like, I don't have the space. I mean, it really does make me feel like maybe it's just me that have a problem with this stuff. I don't know why. I feel like, to me, city management needs to have a lot of quality of life and good UI. And so maybe I would be okay with these things if it just felt easier to move things around and to just understand what everything is visually. But I don't know. It was just a small thing, but I wanted to bring it up. So yeah. Ball X Pit. In the end, I don't think this is a bad game whatsoever. I just felt like I wanted to touch on a lot of the issues that I have concerning the game was doing really well. I wanted to just give my own thoughts on it. And in the end, it is a fast-paced game that has pacing issues, but it's nice to have a fast game that people can just grab and not have to worry about. I do wish the game actually had more mechanics to make it a little bit more strategic and to actually have more fun with the really cool aspects of the game that I think a lot of people are not going to be able to experiment with, because I feel like you can only experiment with them once you've really cleared a lot of the game's content in the first place. I think that the different levels and bosses are really fun to explore, and the character design is really fun. Even though in my head I had a better vision of this game, it doesn't mean that it won't be a really enjoyable game for a lot of other people, and it has been, which is great. Don't get me wrong, I'm always happy for indie games to do very well. I was just kind of surprised personally with how well this game was received, that I thought my experience was not as enjoyable as the people apparently. But in the end, this game, it was still a fun time. I did complete it. I mean, I wanted to make sure I would complete it before giving my review. But yeah, it was kind of mundane. I wish there was more to it. But overall, it was still an enjoyable experience. And I would give Ball X Pit a 6.5 peppers out of 10. Definitely better than the average game, that's for sure. But I don't know. I just feel like there was a lot that could have been done differently for my own enjoyment. Maybe not yours. If you disagree, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I know this is definitely going to be a controversial opinion. But if this looks fun, definitely check it out, because it's quick, simple, and a good time. So yeah, that's about it.